Alrighty, so yesterday we talked about finding side lengths based off of our trigonometric ratios and the angles that were provided for us. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So yesterday we were looking for sides. We used sine, cosine, and tangent. So to find DE, where 51 is, this is the opposite side. 18 is the hypotenuse because of my right angle in the bottom. So opposite. And hypotenuse means we're going to use sine. So we use sine of 51 equals O over H, which was 18. And I had to multiply both sides by 18 to get the O by itself. And when I plug that into the calculator, DE is equal to the length of 18 times sine of 51, which is going to give me 13.988. If I round that to the nearest tenth, it gives us 14 feet. So we use just our regular sine function to find side lengths. Now what we're going to talk about today is using the inverse function of our trig, or the arc function, depending on what kind of calculator you're using. It's going to have that little -1 in the top corners you see here. So 1, I want you to look at your calculator and identify where that is. It should be directly above. It's not a button directly above, but it's writing directly above the sine, cosine, and tangent button. And it should be in the color of your second button, which is in the top left-hand corner. It's usually blue. Sometimes it's yellow. It just depends on your calculator. So in order to find or use that inverse function, you would hit the second key first, and then either sine, cosine, or tangent, depending on what you were using. Now, what does the inverse function do? Well, the inverse function, as opposed to finding a side, finds the measure of the angle. So we used trig to find missing side lengths. We're going to use inverse trig to find missing angle measures. Because all we know for these is the right angle. We don't know either of the other two angles. So it could be 70 and 20, it could be 50 and 80, or not 50 and 80, 50 and 40, it could be all sorts of things. So it's going to be a little bit different. And we still use the same ratios. So cosine uses adjacent and hypotenuse. Tangent uses opposite and adjacent. Sine uses opposite and hypotenuse. Those ratios stay the same, but how we are using them is going to be a little bit different. So if I'm looking for an angle, so if I'm looking for H, I can identify across from H is the opposite side of 15, and 17 is my hypotenuse. So opposite and hypotenuse uses sine. So this time I'm just going to say inverse of sine, and then I insert the ratio I am using, 15 over 17. And that's going to equal the measure of angle H. And all I have to do is type this in the calculator. So second sine to get that inverse sine. And inside the parentheses, you're going to do, 15 divided by 17, close parentheses and enter. And from there, we're going to get the measure of angle H is equal to 61.9275. But we're going to go ahead and round that to the nearest tenth right now. So that's going to be 61.9 degrees. So let's identify all of our ratios and how we should type them in. So again, when we're looking for a missing side, we're looking for an angle, or we're looking for a side length. We're given theta, which is our angle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of theta would be adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, the converse of that, or the inverse of that, is when we use them to find the angle. So you use the inverse of sine, still using O over H, opposite over hypotenuse, and that's going to give you the measure of angle theta. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, again, that inverse cosine, then adjacent over hypotenuse, is going to give you the measure of that angle theta. And with tangent, inverse tangent, opposite over adjacent, plug that into the calculator, and it will give you the measure of the angle theta.